Hi everyone, I'm Claire Sweet and I'm a financial advisor and money coach based in the UK, although I work with business owners all over the world. I've prepared this little video for you to give you a bit of an overview as to how to get started with investing, because people often find it really overwhelming and there are just a few key things you need to think about in order to get started with investing. So I'm sharing them in this video. Now, although this video was prepared for my UK audience, the concepts are valid wherever you are in the world. So the only difference is going to be what you call the wrapper that you put your investment in where you live. So for example, if you live in America, your pensions and investments might have names like 401k, Roth IRA and other things like that, whereas in the UK we might call them pensions or ISAs, but the concept is the same and the information will work for you in just the same way. At the end, I'll pop up all my contact details. If you've got any questions and want to come back to me either about the video itself or about ways that we can work together, please make contact through Facebook or one of my other channels. I'll see you soon. Take care. Bye-bye. Brilliant. Let me make that a little bit smaller and then we can go from there. Thank you. Okay, so hi everybody, great to see you here today. This is one of your monthly masterclasses. For those of you that are new and haven't been along before, so what we tend to do is go through the masterclass stuff now. Any questions you've got, you're welcome to put into the chat or save till the end, and we'll do a Q&A. This part of the presentation, the masterclass, will be uploaded to the member zone, so you can go back into it at any point and you can look at it later. The Q&A at the end won't be recorded, so it will give you the opportunity to ask any questions that you want to do. And that's one of the perks of coming live rather than watching the replay. So here we go. So this masterclass today is about investing for women, and I've put this topic in because it's something that I get asked about more and more, and I think it's really important that everybody has a good grounding in what investing is, why you need to do it, and how it works, so that you know what questions to ask and you can sort of go from there. You'll find that this is complementary to the material that's already in your member zone, so use it alongside it, and again, ask if you've got any questions, that's fine. So here we go. So the objectives of today, what I'm looking to cover is what is investing and why we need to do it. Risk, how much risk do you need to take? Wrapper, does it matter what wrapper your money is invested in? And I'll explain what a wrapper is shortly. And then things that you should never invest in, because again, there are lots of things out there that people invest in. And it's really important that you don't get taken advantage of. I want you to be able to make the right decisions moving forward. So why are we talking about investing anyway? Well, it's all to do with inflation. So inflation is all about what things cost today compared to what they cost last year. Because what that means is it erodes the value of cash. So if you had £10,000 in a savings account and you leave it in a savings account, yes, your money is completely safe, but because you're now not getting any interest, that £10,000 will be £10,000 next year, and in 5 years, and in 10 years, and in 20 years. But what you can buy with £10,000 in 20 years' time is not going to be as much as you can buy now, because that's what inflation means. The worked example I always give for this is think about the cost of something like a Mars bar. When you were a child, how much was a Mars bar? I'm sure it was 25, 30p, something like that. Now, if you went into a shop, you're looking at 65, 70p, more if you've gone into a petrol station. That's because the cost has gone up. You could use the same example thinking about what your parents paid for their house, or for those of you that are property owners, thinking about how much your property has gone up in value over the last 10, 20 years or whatever. So this is why we need to look at investing, because over the short term, it's absolutely fine to have money in cash, but over the long term, your money is not going to have any buying power. So that's why it is so important that we do this. So whether you're looking long term for something like pension planning, or you're looking at just money that you're going to need, but not for the next 5, 10, 15 years, it's important that we look at some element of investing so that the value of your money is held. And the general rule of thumb says if it's less than 5 years till you're going to need the money, you put it into savings, so some sort of cash account or equivalent, so bank account, building society account, premium bonds, something like that. But if you want it to be for longer term, then you would look at investing it. So the key rules when we're looking at investing is that your money needs to be tied up for 5 to 10 years or more. And I'm going to explain to you why that is. Now, it doesn't mean necessarily that the product you use will stop you taking your money out, but it does mean you need to be prepared to leave it. And that's because in the short term, there is a lot of volatility. The value goes up and down, but over the long term, the trend is that it goes uphill. You should try and invest monthly if possible. So if you're saving for your future, whether that's a pension or you're saving for, it might be wedding for your children or deposit for their first house, or just some money for a dream holiday that you're planning in 10 years time or whatever that is, ideally you should invest monthly. Now, the reason that you should do that is because the price of the units goes up and down from month to month. By investing monthly, you benefit from the fact the price changes. So on a month where, say for example, £100 will buy you 100 units, if the unit price drops to 80p a unit, then actually you can now buy more than 100 units. If it goes up, and it's up at £1.20 a unit, then you're not going to be able to buy as many. So over the course of the year, it averages out, because you know what, it's really hard for people to try and pick which month they think is going to be the best month to buy. Ideally, you want to buy when the price is low and sell when the price is high, but actually trying to time the market is a nightmare. Even the professionals can't do it, and it's not thought of as being a really sensible strategy. Start as soon as you can. So the key thing with any sort of investment is it's not about timing the market and working out when to come in and out. It's the time in the market, how long you are invested. There's a lot of statistics you can use. I can give them to you. You can Google them. That if you invest some money for your children when they are under 18, you can just leave it alone at 18. And by the time they get to 40, 50 or whatever, the growth on that is phenomenal because it's had such a long time to grow. The same goes for anything that you want to save for. You are much better to start saving now, even if you can only afford £50 a month, and then look to put it up as you earn more or as your disposable income increases, rather than thinking, I'll do it when we've paid the mortgage off, I'll do it when the kids have left home, I'll do it when I've got a better job, because those things often don't come, or when they do come, there's another reason that you can't start because you're spending the money on something else. And unfortunately, the later you leave it, the harder it is to grow your money because it hasn't got as long to grow. And the fourth sort of key rule is to leave it alone and don't fiddle with it. So the key thing with investing is that you should find the product and the wrapper that you're happy with. And then generally you leave it as it is. You might have a monthly top up going in, or it might just be some money that is parked and is just sat there. But what you don't want to be doing is every time you think the price is going down, trying to take the money out and then trying to put it back in again and fiddling with it, because by doing it that way, you can miss out on a phenomenal amount of growth. I wanted to show you this graph here. Now, obviously, if you're watching this on replay, you'll be able to press it on pause and then zoom in and have a look. I've got it on the wall in my office for those of you that have been out to come and see me here. This shows you what has happened to the FTSE 100 index, the UK equities, since 1925. And the reason I like to put this in, because it demonstrates a couple of really important things for you. One thing it shows you is that over the long term, so over that period of time that is nearly 100 years, the value goes up. I think we can all see that it's quite an obvious trend that the money that you've got in there is going to go up over time. But what you will also notice if you look at the top of the line is that it's quite a jaggedy line. It's up and down. And from week to week and month to month, you will find that there is some variation in it. This is why for short-term investing, it's not a great idea. Ultimately, if you were to put your money in, if you look at the central section here where it's blue, shows when Edward Heath was Prime Minister. This is coming up to the recession in 1974. If you'd put your money in at the peak just before that in 1973 and then wanted to take it out 2 years later, you'll see that actually your value is not going to be anywhere near the amount that you put in, and that's going to cause a problem over the short term. However, if you then look at that on long term and you count from that peak up effectively 5 years or 10 years from there, you can see that actually by that stage it has caught up and it's on its way back up again. I mean, that's a bit of a dramatic example because that was a big dip that we had. This graph goes up to 2018. They haven't released this year's one yet. Yes, there's going to be another dip on the other end, but ultimately you just need to put it into context that over time there will be these ups and downs, and it's just something to bear in mind, but to ride along with. Now, the other thing that is quite key from this is to notice that it doesn't actually matter which government is in. The long-term trend is it does still go uphill. So don't let that put you off if you're thinking about putting some money away for the future. Now, I wanted to talk to you a little bit more about short-term volatility. So this is a graph that I used last year with a client when I did a review. Now, the reason I've picked a 17-18 graph is that this year has been completely mental. We've had a general election, we've had coronavirus, we've had Brexit, and it doesn't show a typical year. And I wanted to just illustrate what we mean by volatility. So this is over a 12-month period. For one of our funds, for typically a dynamic type fund, but I'll come on to that later. It's all very similar. But if you look at the navy blue line, the dark blue line at the bottom, this is what has happened to the FTSE 100 index over that period of time. And you'll see that we start at 0 because that's the default setting on these graphs. And over the course of the year, by the time we get to the end of the year, we've finished about 3.5–4% up. Okay, so over the year, it's gone up just. But if you can look at it, you know, we've had a little bit of a dip in September. It's gone back up again. November, it's up, down again. December, January, mid-January, it's gone up. Then it's dropped right the way down in February there. But then it's on its way back up again. So this again is the reason why you don't invest in the stock market for short term. So, you know, if you said to me today that you've got £1,000 that you need to put away and you're going to need it in 6 months' time, there's no way that we're going to look to invest that, because I can't tell you where we are on this graph now. I mean, the thing is, when people look at things, you know, if you look at the little drop that happened just after November, I'm sure at that point people were like, oh, it's on the way down, it's on the way down. But actually, it was going to go back up afterwards. And if you'd have taken your money out there, you'd have lost the growth on the way back up. And again, there's a bigger dip later on in the year, but it has come back up again. So all I want to show you is that it is a volatility thing over short term. It's just part of it. If you want completely safe, then you don't invest your money, you save your money, you put it in a savings account, but then you have to allow for the fact that because of inflation, each year your money will be worth about 3% less than it did the previous year. So let's talk a little bit more about risk and about why we might need to take some risk. So as a financial advisor, when we sit and chat with clients about pensions and investments, we have to decide where we are going to invest the money and how much risk we should put that money under. Now, there are three parts of this. The one we're going to look at first on the right-hand side is your need to take risk. So this is what we've just covered already, is that if you want to beat inflation over the long term, you are going to need to take some element of risk. That is your need to take risk, okay? If you've got just putting money away and you don't need it to grow, you've got plenty of money, plenty of income, and actually you don't want it to grow, you just need it to hold its value, you can afford to take a little bit less risk because you only need growth that's going to cover inflation. If you've got a long time to retirement, you probably want to take a bit more risk because you want to make sure that when you get there, you're going to have as much money as possible, because with risk comes reward. It's the opposite side of the coin. So ultimately, that's something that you need to balance. The other two that are on here, so the one at the top is your capacity to take risk. So some of this depends on how much money we're investing and what other assets you've got. So if you said to me that you've got £20,000 that you want to invest, but that is all the money that you've got no emergency savings, you haven't got a buy-to-let property, you don't own your own home, you've literally got that money, you're not going to want to take a lot of risk with it because actually that is all you've got. Whereas if you've got this is some of the money we're looking to deal with, and then on top of that you've also got money in savings, or you've got money in investment properties or whatever, you can probably afford to take a little bit more risk, because if you were to lose this bit of money, you're not losing everything. The other thing that goes with capacity to take risk is, as we've seen over the long term, if you go back to the chart with the blue and the red on it, things go uphill over the long term. So if you're in your 20s or 30s and you're looking to put money away for retirement, you can actually take a bit more risk because it's got much longer to recover. If you get a dip, you've got longer to wait for it to come back up. If you're nearing retirement, if you're in your 50s or 60s, you're not going to want to take as much risk, because realistically, you're going to want to take that money out in the next 5, 10, 15 years. So you don't want too much risk. So these are all things that you need to consider. And then the last one is your attitude to risk, which is what we're going to move on to now. So your attitude to risk is all based on you as a person and how you feel about money. And this can be affected by a whole load of different things. It can be affected by your age, your life experience, your education level. You can be, whether you're a business owner or an employee, you tend to find that business owners are slightly more towards the adventurous end of the scale, and employees tend to be towards the risk averse end of the scale. And you tend to also find that as you get older, people move down the scale, become more conservative, more risk averse, because like I said earlier, they want to lock in the growth they've got. Now, this is just a 6-point scale. This is one that I use with my clients. There are lots available that you can find online, and depending on how you choose to do your investments, whether you get somebody like me to help you or you go online and use an online platform and do it yourself, will depend on what sort of risk score they do. Some of them do it out of 10, some of them do it out of 8. We use out of 6. But the general rule is that as you move from left to right, you're taking slightly more risk, which is going to give you the potential for more return, albeit there could be the potential for more loss as well. So what we're aiming to do is give you enough risk that you get the growth you need without you feeling uncomfortable with it. And then typically we actually look to redo the questionnaire that we use to work out where you are on this scale. We redo that every couple of years, or if something dramatic has happened in your life, we will redo it then. So if you take, for example, somebody who has experienced a bereavement in the family, that can often affect their risk level. So for some people, experiencing a bereavement can make them feel a bit unsafe. They might want to be more cautious, and they might want to hang on to every penny they've got. For other people, a bereavement can put them the other way, because they can suddenly think, do you know what, life is for living and I want to take a bit more risk for this. And there's no way of knowing. Ultimately, it's down to the individual. And the key thing about anything like this is there is no one answer for everybody. You know, I've got 7 of you sat here today watching this, and if I were to risk profile you, I imagine you'd probably all come out different. And then after discussing what the implications and things are, you might each change categories, stay as you are, or some people think, actually, do you know what, I'm going to leave it in the building society, and that's absolutely fine. There is no wrong answer at all. So the reason that we need to know where your risk category is it will then tell us where your money should be invested. So the big thing that happened over the last few years is that the general thought with investing changed quite dramatically. So in the old days, for long-term investment, people would use things like endowments or pensions or PEPs. And typically you bought a Sun Life fund or a Pru fund, or whichever insurer it was that you bought it through. Now, the problem with that was that although it was easy to manage and it was all in one place, if that company failed, they took your pension money with them. And unfortunately, in the 80s, certainly there were a lot of companies that did that. There were people who had diligently saved for retirement, or their employer had, and their money was actually gone. Things have now changed. So what we now look at is what we call a collective investment. And what that means is that your money, when you invest it, is split into a whole load of different companies, a whole load of different sectors, and it's all varied based on where you come out on the risk level. So for somebody who has come out as a dynamic investor, you'll remember from the previous screen, that was sort of like second from the top, so quite an adventurous type portfolio. We would look at investing 55% of your money in global shares or equities, 29% in UK shares, 3% in fixed interest bonds, and 13% in commercial property. So fixed interest bonds are slow and steady. They will grow at 2, 3, 4% a year, and we'll know what they're going to pay out. So it provides a regular income, and they hold their value very well. Commercial property tends to be rental on things like office centres, shopping centres, big buildings and land and things like that. So again, they've got long leases. We know what's going to come in on those, and it's slow, steady growth. The UK shares and the worldwide shares are split over a range of industries, a range of companies, and the typical portfolio is going to be exposed to between 65 and 100 and something different parts, so that if any one thing fails, you don't risk losing all your money. Now, the reason that we use some UK shares and some worldwide shares is that you tend to find that as things go up or down in the UK, they're doing different things in other parts of the world. Often there is a bit of a lag. When there is a government announcement about something, that can affect a share price. But obviously what we're doing here is different than might be happening in America or in Japan or somewhere else in Europe. So by having stuff that is not UK based, it helps smooth out some of the dips and things that are going on with the stock market. If you at any point go back in this presentation, if you pause it and run back through the slides, if you go back to the one where we're looking at volatility and look at the two lines, the pale blue line on the top is the dynamic fund and the dark blue line underneath is the FTSE 100 index. And you'll find that because it's not all in UK shares, that is what is cushioning the blow. That's what gives us the gap between the two lines, because it's smoothing out some of the bumps. It's meaning that you don't necessarily get quite as much growth, but it's stopping you getting the losses. So it means that you're more likely to hold the value of your fund. In terms of all the stuff that's happened recently with coronavirus, FTSE 100 index dropped by more than 20%. Most of our funds dropped down. They all dropped in some way. The lowest went down to about 17, 18%. They're all on their way back up now. The one that I checked this morning, this dynamic fund, is currently running at minus 4.7 based on where it was 6 months ago. So it's pretty much back up to where it was. And if you put that in context, the price value is the same as it was back in July 2017. So effectively, it's just like losing 3 years growth, but it means it's now back where it was and it's on its way back up again. So in the long-term trend, it's doing exactly what it needs to do. Choosing your wrapper. So this is the next thing that we're going to go on to. So the first stage is for you to do some sort of risk assessment and work out what type of fund you want to put your money in. So do we want something moderate, something balanced, something a bit more adventurous? What is it that we want to invest our money in, and how much are we going to put? Once we've made that decision, the next thing we need to do is decide where we're going to put it. What sort of product, what sort of wrapper? And all a wrapper is a way of looking after your money that has a particular set of rules and restrictions and a particular tax treatment. So to do this, the things we need to be thinking about is, when do you need access to this money? We've said we're going to leave it for 5 to 10 years, but actually, do you need it in 10 years, or is this money for retirement? Are you planning to access it quite soon? How old are you now? Because that will affect when you can access retirement savings. How much are you investing? So again, some wrappers have got a limit as to how much you can put in either per year or in total, and we're going to come on to that. And do you want to pay tax on it now or tax on it in the future? So ultimately, most income means you pay tax on it in some way. The way that wrappers are set up means that there are some of them that you can defer paying tax now and you can pay it in the future. But there are other things that you can not have to pay tax on in the future because you've paid tax on it now. So again, I'm going to go through that. And again, this is something that is completely individual to you. It will depend on what other income you've got. Are you going to continue working? Do you have a business that you will still be able to draw income out of in the future? And how much tax are you prepared to pay? Do you want to end up paying no tax? Because you know, it is perfectly possible to create an income of £40,000 or £50,000 a year and pay no tax at all if you structure things right. So the three main types of things that people use for investments, the three main wrappers, are pensions, ISAs, and investment accounts. I'm going to go through now. I've put them into a table for you so I can explain to you a bit about what each one is and some more information. Now, if you want more detail on this, if you go into the member zone, there is a whole section on pensions and on ISAs, and it will give you a lot more information. So the first thing we talked about is access. When do you need access to this money? This money that we're going to put in, when do you need to be able to take it out? Now, a pension you cannot take out until you are 55 or older, okay? And that is it. If you see anything online that says we can help you get your money out of your pension now, you don't need to wait till you're 55, it is a scam and you need to walk away, okay? That is really, really crucial. There are really a very few exceptions to this rule. Okay, there are some old company pensions that if you are terminally ill, they will let you have the money earlier. And I have seen in 13 years I've been doing this, one protected rights pension that actually has a retirement age of 50 in it, but that is it. And I've only ever seen one incidence of that in 13 years. So the general rule is 55 or older, okay? So if you're in your 50s now and you're putting money into a pension, if you wanted to take the money out, you haven't got to wait very long. But if you're in your 20s or 30s, actually, you've got to be prepared to tie that money up for the next 30 or 20 years, depending on how old you are. An ISA, so this is a stocks and shares ISA that we're going to put your fund in. It's not a cash ISA like you'd get from your bank or building society that doesn't pay any interest, okay? It's just a wrapper for those shares, for that fund we've talked about. You can take money out of an ISA at any time. So although we're saying 5 to 10 years, worst case scenario, if you had to take it out next year, you could. You're gambling with how much it's going to be worth, but actually if you needed to take it out, you could. And again, with an investment account, you can take the money out at any time. So if you're saying to me that you want to invest some money and you want it in 10 years' time, but you won't be 55, it's going to need to go either into an ISA or an investment account. The reason that you would do an ISA is that it's got more favourable tax treatment, but an investment account can be held jointly. So for parents who are investing for a child or for a couple who want to invest their money together, rather than having individual products, sometimes that can be an option. So the next thing we're looking at is investing limits. So some products, you're limited to how much money you can put in to them. So if you want to put money into a pension, you're allowed to put in 100% of your earnings up to a maximum of £40,000 a year. Now, I know that figure might sound completely huge, but if you are a business owner and you've got money in your company account that you don't need to take as salary because you've had a profitable year, what that means is that your business can pay in up to £40,000 a year into your pension on your behalf, and it saves you on your corporation tax. So it's something that lots of business owners do. If you are earning money, but you don't need your money to live off because you've got a partner who's earning, or you've got income coming from another source like property or something like that, you could look at investing all of your money, your earnings, into a pension. If you are a non-earner, so for whatever reason you are not working, you don't have any earned income, you can still invest £2,800 a year into a pension. So parents sometimes do this for children. Or you might find that if you've got a couple and one is earning well with a good pension already, they're already putting a lot in, they might choose to top up their spouse's pension. So there are lots of options there. An ISA, you're limited to £20,000 a year, and you can put it in as a lump or you can put monthly payments. You can only do £20,000 a year, and you can't keep taking it in and putting it out. There are various restrictions on things like that. But what it does mean is you can put £20,000 in this year, and then when you get round to April, which is the start of the new tax year, you can put another £20,000 in. So you can use it as an ongoing. There's no limit at all in an investment account. So typically, if someone is looking to invest in an ISA and they have more than £20,000, what we will do is we put £20,000 in the ISA and we park the rest of it in the investment account. They're both sat there in the same moderate fund, growing at the same rate. And then in April next year, we'll move another 20,000 from the investment account into the ISA so that we can use the ISA allowance. Now, you might wonder why I would bother. Why would I want to put it into the ISA as opposed to the investment account? What is the advantage of that? It's to do with the tax relief. Okay, so all the money that we have in the UK is taxed one way and another. Now, when you're looking at a pension, there is tax relief on pension contributions. And what that means is if you pay money into a pension, say you pay £100 into the pension, they will give you tax relief of £25. So £125 gets credited to your pot. So effectively like free money being added. Now, if you've ever been an employee, you'll have seen this on your payslip, that your employer will take money out for a pension, but they might deduct £100 for a pension, but you notice your take-home pay only drops by £80. It's the same thing. It's because you don't have to pay tax on that money that is going into your pension. Now, the advantage of doing that is that you can get free money, especially if you are a non-taxpayer or if you are paying in from your personal account into your pension. So effectively, you can get some free money. And that free money, you're going to get growth on that for 5 years, 10 years, 30 years, or whatever. So it can be a really good way of boosting your pot and getting some extra money in. Now, you don't get any sort of tax relief up front on ISA or investment account. You're going to pay into that from your personal bank account. And that is money that you've already earned and you've already paid tax on it. You don't get any further tax relief on it. But the reason that this is important is when you come to take the money, okay? So with a pension, there's tax relief up front, but when you come to take the money out, you can take 25% tax-free, and then you pay tax on the remainder at whatever your tax rate is. So if you think of pension income like employed income, you take your 25% tax-free, and then if you take an income over that, you're going to pay tax on it, exactly the same as you would if you were earning it. So if you pull £20,000 a year out of a pension, you're going to pay tax on that the same as you would if you were earning £20,000 a year. Okay, so this is one thing to look at when you're looking at where to save your money, because if you've already got money coming in from, you're going to have a company pension, you're going to have a state pension, and you're already close to using your tax allowance, your 12.5 grand a year, where we don't pay any tax on income up to that. You need to look at whether you want to put more money into a pension, because potentially you're going to have to pay tax on it. Now, the reason people tend to like it is that a lot of people, when they pay into a pension, are a higher rate taxpayer, which means the free money that gets added at your marginal rate. So if you're a higher rate taxpayer, you actually get 40% added. And the hope is that when you come to pay tax on the way out, you'll only be a basic rate taxpayer and you'll only pay 20% tax. So not only have you had the growth on the free money, but you pay less tax on the way in and the way out. It's very clever how it works. I've got a lot more info and I've got another chart that shows you this, but I don't want to confuse you by going in too deep at this level. The thing about ISAs is we talked about the fact there's no tax relief on the way in, but what it does mean is there's no tax to pay on the way out. So if you put £20,000 a year into an ISA, and in 10 years' time you've got £200,000 plus the growth, you can take all or some of that money out at any point and pay no tax on it whatsoever. So when I was saying earlier that it's perfectly possible to have an income of 50 odd grand a year and pay no tax, this was part of what I was saying. And this is often why when people are looking at planning their future, there's some money into a pension, but some money into other things as well. Because you could look at setting your pension so that you pull 12.5 grand a year from your pension, which is the tax allowance, so you wouldn't pay any tax. And then you could take another 10 grand a year out of your ISA, so you can get your 22.5 grand a year and pay no tax at all, which has got to be better than putting it all into a pension and then having to pay tax on some of it. So that's one of the reasons why we look at that. Now, investment accounts are not particularly popular. There are a few reasons we use them, and you do pay capital gains tax if you make profit on it. But for most people, the amount of profit you make is actually negligible, not because it's not making money, but just because you're allowed a limit of capital gains tax each year of £12,300 it just went up to this year. If you've got investment properties, you will know about capital gains tax because you pay capital gains tax on profit if you sell an investment property or if you sell things like works of art or other bits and pieces. But on your portfolio, you are allowed £12,500 near enough each year that you don't pay tax on. So all it means is if you've got money on your investment account is that we take it out bit by bit. We don't just take it all out in one tax year. And by spreading it over 2 or more tax years, it means you don't pay any tax. It's a bit more complicated. You can get someone to help you do it. Your accountant, your financial advisor, they will help you with that. So things not to invest in. So this is my last slide, and then we're going to go on to the questions. I'm going to look at the stuff that's popped up in the chat, bring you all eyes back online so you can chat through, you can ask me anything, and at that point I'm happy to scan back through the presentation and answer any particular questions that you've got. Things that you should not invest in. Okay. Single company shares, you need to diversify. Okay, so when I look at things that I've seen people do where they have got caught or bitten on the backside by things happening to their portfolio, this is the #1 mistake people make, is they find a company they like and they will pick something like Vodafone or BP or whatever, and they will buy shares in it. That is all well and good if your share price goes up, but if your share price goes down, you have got all your eggs in one basket. So by using a collective fund, you still get to exposure to these things, you get the chance of being part of it, but because your money is pooled with everybody else, you haven't got the risk of losing all of it at once. Now, that being said, if you work for a company and they are offering you free shares in the company and you're not paying for them, then yes, of course you want them. And if they go up in value, brilliant. If they don't go up a lot or they go down in value, if you haven't paid for them, it really doesn't matter. But if you're looking at somewhere to invest your money, you need to be looking at diversifying into at least 50 different holdings, and you'll find that most companies have got a minimum of somewhere between 300 and £1,000 that they will accept as a single investment if you're investing directly. So it can be very expensive if you go down the company share routes and you're going to still try to diversify. Don't invest in startups, including people that you know. Okay, it can be really easy that somebody says to you, or you see an opportunity where they say, oh, our business is starting up, we're looking for funding. If you give me £10,000, I will increase your money and you'll get it back in 5 years' time and you'll get £50,000 back or whatever. They tend to be really enticing. People you know may even try to encourage you, sweet talk you, or guilt trip you into investing in their wonderful business venture. But unfortunately, these things can fail. And if they do fail, they will take your money with them. And there is no insurance against that. There is no guarantee. So if somebody's starting up a business that you know and they want some investment, if you want to put some money in, providing you're going to treat it as a gift and you're not expecting it back, go for it. But don't please put your life savings into investing in something that hasn't got any sort of guarantee or any sort of protection involved in it. If you want to be able to invest in startup companies, there are products you can use. There are things like VCTs, venture capital trusts, where a company, again, will diversify. They will choose a range of startup companies and they will invest your money in that. And they will do all the research and the due diligence to check that not everything is going to just disappear and take your money with it. Now, VCTs are covered in your member zone. They are a more risky type of investment. They're not suitable for everybody, but it does give you a way of investing in startups if you want to be able to do it in a more safe way than just paying money to someone that you've never heard of. Bitcoin, right, if I had £1 for every time someone told me Bitcoin was an amazing investment. Okay, Bitcoin is a virtual currency. It doesn't exist. You can't actually buy a coin of it. It's all done by computer. It's not regulated in any way. And although people who love it will make a lot of noise about the fact that it's more secure than currency and you can do things with it that you can't with currency, there isn't enough of a track record. We don't know enough about it. And ultimately, if the people running it decided to pull it at some point, you haven't got anything to show for it and there is no way of tracing it. So I really would be very, very cautious. If, again, you want to have a little bit of a play with it, if you regard it like a lottery ticket or a gift and you think, actually, I'm going to stick 100 quid in and see what happens. If you don't mind losing your £100, yep, go for it. But please don't use it for investments or anything like that. I heard from somebody recently who had a little bit of money invested, decided because it looked like it was going uphill to put more money in, and actually invested £100,000 in Bitcoin, and it has dropped through the floor and the company doing it has disappeared and he has lost his money. And you know, it's the type of thing where often things that are too good to be true and all that, you know how the saying goes. Don't invest in anything unregulated. Now, unfortunately, Facebook is dreadful for this. You will see things pop up. They look like they are proper investments that are regulated, and they are not. Often they are property funds, places like Cyprus, Greece, and places like that. But there are other things as well. The way you can spot it is that it's going to tell you you're going to be making 7 or 10% return with low risk. You don't get that level of return with low risk. That is going to always be a moderate to high risk. In fact, it's going to be more than moderate. It's going to be towards the top end, not quite right at the top, but it's going to be up the top end. Often you'll find that these adverts at the bottom will say something about FCA regulation, but if you actually were to click through, look at the details and go to the FCA website, you'll find that the company is usually FCA regulated to sell something like home insurance, something that is really easy to get set up with. And yeah, unfortunately, if you invest in anything like this, and it works, brilliant. But if it doesn't, which more often than not it doesn't, then your money's gone and you've got no comeback at all. So yeah, anything advertised on Facebook. If you see something and you think, do you know what, I've seen this, is it any good? Please run it by somebody who's qualified, like a financial advisor, and say to them, I've seen this, is this something I could look at? And get some backup. Never jump into anything. The key thing with investing is that it should be an informed decision. Anything that says you have to act now, this deal is going, it's all marketing speak. Please don't go down that route. So just remember the adage, if it seems too good to be true, it probably is. So that's the key thing to look at with that. So things that you should be doing first before you look at investing. Make sure that you're earning more than you spend. Those of you that know me well will know I always bang on about this. Please do a budget planner and check that you are earning more than you spend and that you have got money over each month that you can put into this pension, this ISA, this investment, whatever you're planning to do. Because if you are spending each month more than you earn, you're going to get into debt. And if you're getting into debt, the last thing you want to be doing is tucking money away for a rainy day. Emergency fund. You need an emergency fund, and this should be held in cash savings. So bank account, building society account, premium bonds, something that will hold its value, is 100% safe, 100% guaranteed. What you have in emergency fund is completely up to you and how you feel about it. There's a bit of an arbitrary statistic that says that you should keep 3 to 6 months worth of bills money. That's a useful place, depending on whether yours is the only income into the household or not. You might or might not need that much. Most people like to keep a couple of £1,000 because it makes them feel safe. And in fact, the amount that you keep to feel safe might need to be more than that, especially if you're a business owner and your income varies. So this year with COVID-19, we found that people who've had an emergency fund have felt considerably less stressed about the fact their income has dropped than people who haven't. And so definitely do that if you haven't already. Decide how much you can lock away and when you need to access the money, because again, you need to make sure that you're putting away something that's affordable and that you're not going to need it soon. And if you were looking at something like a pension, for example, you'd be better to pick an amount you can commit to every month and then look at increasing that over time or topping it up with a lump every so often than just putting lumps in. Because if you remember going back to the blue and white graph with the volatility, if you're going to put a lump in, if you put it in on the right month, it might buy you a lot more than putting it on the wrong month. But because you don't know when those are,